Now, if you're in the market for a new car like an A-Class hatchback, you may have stumbled across a car called an A-Class Saloon. So yes, believe it or not, the A-Class is available in a hatchback and a saloon shape. So in this video today, I'm showing you an in-depth comparison between these two models. Now, the A-Class is one of Mercedes-Benz's best-selling models, and rightly so. It first launched in 2018 with this awesome widescreen display stretching right across the dashboard. And to be honest, even when it launched, even I didn't realise how much of a trendsetter it was going to be. It literally takes inspiration from the S-Class years ago, a car that can sometimes stretch well over £100,000. So guys, starting on the exterior of the cars, basically, apart from the body shape and the obvious thing where one is a hatchback and a saloon, it is worth noting that the saloon is slightly longer. So for example, if you have a garage or something like that, you might need to take that into consideration. So I'll put the dimensions up on screen here so you can see. You'll be pleased to know that the width and height are virtually the same. Pretty much everything on the front of the cars are exactly the same as well. You can almost get the same specs and engines, but I'll cover more on that in a minute. But yeah, do factor in that length because it is slightly longer. So let's have a look at the boot. So starting on the hatchback first, believe it or not, the hatchback of course has the larger boot opening, but the saloon actually has the larger boot capacity, mainly because I think it's obviously slightly longer, it goes back a bit further. But the boot capacity of the A-Class hatchback does depend on which kind of engine variant you go for. So you can go for diesel, petrol or plug-in hybrid, but the boot capacities range from either 310 up to 355. It just depends which one you go for. Obviously the 310 is for the plug-in hybrid, just because it kind of just eats into the boot ever so slightly. So that's the hatchback. Let's have a look at the saloon. So moving on to the saloon, basically the obvious thing is of course the way the boot opens. So the glass is fixed on the saloon, whereas the hatchback, the actual boot opens up a bit like that. But of course this does weirdly actually have the larger boot capacity. Now for those with a keen eye, you'll notice that this one is the plug-in hybrid, so it's an A250E. So it does have that slight boot reduction, mainly because that's where the batteries are just underneath. But the boot capacity of this can range anything from 345 litres all the way up to 395 litres, so it's quite practical. But of course, on both cars as well, you can also fold the seats down just in case you need to get any long items through. Typically, it's a 40-20-40 split, just in case. So boots are similar. This one's larger, but that one's got the larger opening. So with all that out of the way, let's have a look at the rear seats. So starting off in the rear seats on the hatchback model first, as is customary with all my videos, and I'll do this for both, I always set this seat up for my driving position, and for some context, I'm 6'2", and well, I naturally have long legs anyway, so I could move the seat further forward, but that's typically where I drive, so it just kind of shows like leg room and space in the back. In terms of in the rear, I will just check the saloon headroom. I think they're virtually the same, but we'll jump in that one in a second. But in terms of in the back, on both models, you'll have a USB-C port down here with the vents, and of course little net here for storage. There's storage in the doors as well, and of course the rear window switches, and of course I said you can fold this one down for storage and that sort of thing. So yeah, pretty nice. And the seats actually have this red stitching, which I'll show you on the seats in the front in a second as well. So that continues of course to the rear. The one thing that is different though is of course the headrests compared to the saloon, but I will touch on that in a minute because it's more kind of prominent in the front. So then jumping into the rear of the A-Class Saloon, pretty much everything here is exactly the same. As I mentioned, the headrests are slightly different, but I'll touch on that in a minute when we get to the front, just because they're a bit bigger to kind of talk about. I've got the red stitching here, vents just here, net, USB-C port, so that's all the same. The thing that I did pick up on though, just from jumping in that one and this one a couple of times, there is slightly less headroom in here. Now there is enough headroom for me, but I kind of measured with just putting a few fingers above my head, and I can do about 3 fingers in this one and then 4 in that one. So particularly if you have, I guess, tall rear passengers maybe, then they might prefer the A-Class hatchback. But having said that, it's fine for me, so I don't mind that, you know, you're not going to hit your head on the ceiling or anything. One thing as well to factor in is the rear of the car. On both cars, of course, you get a reversing camera, but in a saloon you don't have a rear wiper. So in a hatchback you do, but saloons typically don't. So if you're used to having a rear wiper, maybe you've had hatchbacks or estates before, then obviously that's something to consider as well. So let's have a look at these headrests at the front. So guys, these headrests, now this is the A-Class hatchback, and you'll notice they kind of got this sporty design where they're kind of all built into one, so this bit doesn't move. Now that's not a negative or anything like that, because I've had a car actually with both, and you know, they're both as comfortable as each other, but it's just worth noting in terms of your preference. So this bit's fixed here, it kind of looks a bit like this. Of course both have red stitching, but in the saloon, of course, the headrests are different. So this is what they look like here. They've still got the same red stitching, same styled seat, but this bit and upwards is completely different. So this bit you can actually adjust up and down, and there's a little button just on the side here to lock it into place. And then the button on the other side of the headrest allows you to move it forwards and backwards. So again, both are as comfy as each other, but it's just worth considering that if you did want an adjustable headrest, it might be worth to go for the saloon. So let's have a look at the multimedia screen found in both cars. Now, of course, guys, up front is where the magic happens in the A-Class. Of course, it's got that awesome widescreen display, which is just so good. And of course, in some models, you've also got this ambient lighting as well. One of 64 colours, I might add. And you can even do multicolour as well, which is just so impressive at night time. So basically, the multimedia system is known as MBUX. It's been out since 2018 and is still one of the best out there. It's certainly the best in Mercedes to date. And basically you use it as like a touchscreen like this, or you can use a touchpad down in the middle and just swipe this left and right and it will control elements on the screen. Now, I won't run through every specific portion of MBUX because I have other videos on my channel dedicated to just that, and even just complete sat-nav guides and things like that, so do check out the other videos on my channel. But in the basics, you've got phone here for Bluetooth. You can actually connect 2 phones at the same time, which is quite cool. Got a very functional sat-nav from UK and Europe maps, also hosting live traffic as well. Then of course FM and DAB radio, and of course music playback via either Bluetooth or USB-C ports. And on some models as well, you can also get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Although do just bear in mind it is a wired connection, has to be plugged into this USB-C port just in here. But in terms of around the cabin, there's of course storage just in here, there's cup holders there, storage in there as well with the USB-C port, and I should add in most models there's another one just in there as well. I've got center controls here to control elements on the screen and a few shortcuts for other things like a favourites menu, and then everything here is all for climate control, so you basically just toggle these switches up and down. It'll basically show you on the screen just on the bottom. So let's have a look at the instrument cluster just here. Now, of course, this being a completely digital screen going across the dashboard, you actually control the instrument cluster using the right hand side, and then the left hand screen you can also do it on the left hand side as well. So you basically just swipe this up and down like this to control different things shown on the screen, and you can actually get really creative. So for example, you can have your speed in the middle, swipe this to the left, and then control this side. So you could put your music playback there, for example, and then over here you could put a map, which I think is, there we go, it's that one there. So yeah, you can get really creative. If you wanted, you could even put the map in the middle, a bit like that. Obviously having 2 maps is a little bit greedy, so let's put revs over there, and then I don't know, maybe you want the time over here. So completely customizable, just depending on your preference really. And then finally, guys, on to engines. So do double check with your local Mercedes, as this does vary around the world depending on where you live. So in the UK, and of course correct at the time of recording, A180 and A200 are the petrol engines available on the A-Class. You can get Mercedes AMG engines as well, but I'll cover that in a minute. So the A180 and A200 are 1.3 litre engines. So they don't sound particularly fast being 1.3, but they genuinely are. They're 136 horsepower and 163 horsepower for the 180 and then the 200. From the diesel front, you can also get an A180D and a 200D. Basically, these are 116 horsepower and 150 horsepower for those two. So just depending on your preference. All these engines are front-wheel drive, and this does also include the A250E. So the A250E is a plug-in hybrid. It isn't a self-regenerative hybrid, so I know the word hybrid can mean a couple of things. This one is a plug-in, so you do have to plug it in to charge it up. Basically, it's 160 horsepower from the engine and then 102 from the electric motor. So when you're running on either one, can give you quite a lot of power. And of course, combined, they can give you a little bit of extra boost going down the road as well. So now we get on to the fun topic, which is Mercedes-AMG. Now these engines are always quite fun, so you can get an A35 in both. This is where we move on to 4MATIC, so 4MATIC being four-wheel drive. And it is an adaptive four-wheel drive on both of these engines as well. So basically it will drive on front-wheel drive where it can, but then the split second you need more power, it will put it to the back. So that's what 4MATIC is. But yeah, the A35, 306 horsepower, you can get that on the hatchback and saloon. And for the A45S is just exclusively for the hatchback. 421 horsepower, which is just insane. Now I have actually done a comparison video of these two, so do click on the pop-up banner up above if you want to see that one. That's quite a fun video because I kind of weigh up the differences between the two, and I think I prefer an A35 personally. But I wouldn't say no to a 45 either. But also guys, one thing I wanted to bring to your attention as well is Mercedes-Benz's announcement the other day. And this announcement was actually for the facelift for the Mercedes-Benz A-Class 2023. So this is quite important because obviously this as well can be a factor as well. Of course you could buy an A-Class now, but there again you might want to wait for the facelift in a few months' time. Now, I don't know when exactly it's coming out, but I have got a dedicated video on this, so do click on the pop-up banner up above if you want to see that one. And it is only a facelift, so there are only a couple of changes. A couple of points I observed were power domes on the bonnet, the lights had a slight upgrade, and there's a couple of things different on the interior as well. So do click on that pop-up banner up above if you want to see that one. But guys, that concludes this week's video on the comparison between the hatchback and the saloon. As always guys, huge shout out to Sandown Mercedes-Benz as they help provide access to all these awesome cars you see in the videos. So it'll be very tricky to do it without them. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next week, see you then.